I'm not saying it can be done, but if it is doable, it might be
No,
doable.
no, it's an interesting, very interesting thought, because only the other day there was a panel discussion, I think, by the IIC, in which Nishchal Pandey from Nepal was saying that because of this national symbol thing, there's no point in talking about foreign secretary level talks on the border, etc., because foreign secretaries can do nothing about this. So what you've said is, I think, should set a few minds thinking. And thank you also for the point that you made that India should introspect about the fact that Nepal has changed and there should be different really linkages and different approaches that we should be thinking about. Great. So we've had some really thought-provoking ideas which have been shared by our distinguished panelists. What seems to be reasonably clear is that the Constitution uh, appears to be in danger of becoming a kind of plaything at the mercy of those who are in the pursuit of power. And also the fact that there is very little institutional underpinning, because as Manjeev said, only yesterday, the heads of various constitutional bodies, including the, I think, Office of for Abuse of Authority or whatever it's called. It's an all-important office. Some members of the Election Commission, etc., have all been changed, and nobody seems to be in a position to do anything about it. Um, Talking about institutional underpinning, I must say that when I was in Kathmandu, uh, King Birendra was then the constitutional monarch, and he was under very great pressure. I've written about this also. He was under very great pressure from a number of right-wing forces to step in and assert his authority and do something with the then constitution. And what he did was to consult uh, four countries: India, the United States, Britain, and China, and ask them what would be your reaction if I did this, because I'm under very great pressure and the country is in a very messy situation. And it's very interesting. The feedback I had was that India said it would not be a good idea. The US said it would not be a good idea. The UK said it would not be a good idea. The Chinese remained totally silent. But ultimately, although push was coming to shove, the king did nothing. What I'm trying to say is that this aspect of institutional underpinning is very important. At the moment, unfortunately, Nepal seems to be heading towards a kind of a constitutional vacuum. And, uh, you know, uh, the other day somebody was saying that in the Supreme Court hearing, the whatever the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court decides, there's going to be a huge problem. If he says that Parliament stands resolved, there is one set of problems: street agitations, upheavals, turmoil, etc., etc. Because the Constitution, at least to the layman's understanding, specifically prohibits any kind of dissolution in this way. If, on the other hand, Parliament is reinstated, as has been the case earlier under different constitutions, there could be other problems. The Chief Justice apparently asked at the very first day of the hearing, he asked, what if the Prime Minister dissolves Parliament again? Then, you can repeat the same exercise. And again, Nishchal Pandey was saying in this panel discussion at the IIC, he said, under this constitution, you just have to register a no confidence motion. Apparently, you just have to register a no confidence motion, whether it is the chief against the chief justice or against any other constitutional authority, and that particular authority ceases to function, and it cannot function. So you can have any number of possibilities in terms of precipitating new constitutional crisis. Did you want to say something, Manjeev? I saw you raising your hand on this. Is this true that the Constitution simply says you have to register. No question of passing a no confidence motion, just register. So
Sir,
Mr. Oli can register a no confidence motion against the Chief Justice and he has to step down. Is
sir,
that
we have
true?
Mr. Nishal Pandey with us here, and he was laughing, and he came on the video very briefly. Nishal, you can switch it on. Sir, it has to be registered. And the question that was asked at that webinar to Nishal was, and I called him and asked him that, who can register? Sir, simply sending a letter is not sufficient. The case that we all point to is that of Sushila Karki and the no confidence motion registered by Shehbazul Joba. He was a leader of, he was then, sir, I think the prime minister. And somehow they managed to get it registered. So there is this issue of getting it registered. I'm not very pakka on all of this. But Nishal is there, sir. You can tell him, switch on. Let's hear
Well,
if he wants
Nishal has
something, sir.
just sent a message on the chat box saying that if an impeachment motion is registered, then he ceases to function. I
Sir,
think let Nishal say his piece and then you can respond. Can you
yes.
unmute Mr. Nishal Pandey, if it's possible?
So thank you so much. It looks like a very, very interesting discussion with stalwarts of India on Nepal. And so good to see you, sir, and Ambassador Raj and Ambassador Puri, Ambassador Ranjit Ray, friends like Mahendra Lama. Well, we are the master of our own laws. We make our laws, we break our laws. And this constitution has several flaws. And one of them is this impeachment motion against heads of constitutional bodies, which can be registered by MPs. And if it is registered, he or she ceases to function. He cannot go to office from the next day. And that has happened in the past. Of course, it has to be ratified by Parliament to approve it. So for a moment that the Oli faction can register an impeachment motion against the Chief Justice, then he cannot go to the Supreme Court from the next day. That he'll have to wait for it to be passed in order to function again. That is a serious flaw of this constitution. Another second flaw, sir, and very briefly, is another provision that if a state of emergency is imposed, it has to be ratified by Parliament within a stipulated time frame. But when there is no Parliament now, how it is going to be ratified? So that article is also going to be null and void, several other articles of this constitution. So thank you, sir.
What is the process by which registrations to be done? One of our participants has just posted this in the chat box. Nishal, what is the process by which the
40 or 50 MPs can register an impeachment motion against a head of a constitutional body? Chief Justice, head of a Human Rights Commission, Chief Election Commissioner, all these, or CIA, they can register an impeachment motion against the head of a constitutional body.
Thank you. Manjeev, do you have anything to say? Ranjit, do you have anything to say at this stage? Or Professor Lama?
Yeah, if I may just make one point, there's a difference between impeachment and no confidence motion. So impeachment is against the heads of the constitutional bodies. And for that, I think 25% of the MPs of the House have to submit a written petition to the Speaker. And, only after the Speaker admits this kind of motion is the individual suspended till such time that a decision is taken or not. No confidence motion is against the sitting government. And for that, there is a different process. So the sitting prime minister can be removed in the House through a no confidence motion only 2 years after he has taken over after an election. So there's the distinction between these two.
Okay, that makes it very clear.
I think Ranjit made a very important point here, sir. But Nishal, I think we need to understand, if 50 guys who were MPs send a letter, does it automatically get registered? I don't know. I think all these are matters which are up for grabs. If there's no Parliament, how can you go about registering a impeachment or anything of that kind? So these things are not, let me say, cast in stone as far as Nepal is concerned. So we'll all have to watch this.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can't do it now since there's no Parliament. Yeah. There's no way you can do it now. Yeah. There's no way that the sitting prime minister can be removed.
What you're saying is, if Parliament is reinstated, then you have this possibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Professor Lama, on this point, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, well, you see, the bottom line to the entire debate is if the political leaders are willing to abide by the constitutional provisions. If the institutions which which act as referees to the entire process are willing to abide by constitutional process, right? That is the bottom line. If you have what you have seen in the last 1.5 months is basically nobody is clear about how you interpret constitution. Prime Minister interprets it the way he would he would like he would like to interpret it. Opposition leaders, the institutions like Supreme Court, academics, the civil society, right? That means what? That means uh, we are not very sure about the constitutional processes in Nepal. Secondly, even institutions are not very clear about what is the cause of action that needs to be taken, right? So it is a state of flux. So what is needed at this moment is, come what may, a decision has to be given by someone which should be agreeable. Otherwise, what would happen? Even if the parliament is reinstated, even if the prime minister is the present prime minister says, okay, whoever is the new prime minister, good luck to him. This kind of instability for the next 2 years would be imminent, right? It could be a situation where 3 months there will be one prime minister, another 3 months another prime minister, only to give it a kind of a facade of stability, or in the kind of facade of a continuation of this particular process, the electoral verdict given in the last election. Therefore, at this juncture, what we possibly need to really expect from the highest institutional authority there as a referee is give a verdict as quickly as possible, whatever it is. And when you give a kind of a verdict, you must give a verdict with adequate safeguards, constitutional safeguards, institutional safeguards, so that nobody can really do away, or nobody can fiddle with the verdict the institution has given.
Well, thank you, thank you. Yes, but that's really asking for a lot. What seems to be clear really is that we are heading towards, as I said, this is a tunnel where we are not able to see very clearly whether or not there is light at the end of it. And there are, I think, legitimate fears of prospect of massive unrest, very great instability, of the center just not holding. And also, there is a lot of dark talk about attempts at authoritarian rule, suppression of dissent, of Nepal becoming a kind of a football for international players. The Chinese are already there. India, I don't know how long it can continue with its present um, understated sort of interest in Nepal's internal affairs. Um, there is already a lot of agitation from the far right, from the far left. There is talk about Nepal becoming a Hindutva Rashtra again. Um, and relations with India, I think, are probably beyond the routine ups and downs that we have seen in the past, where you had hiccups from which both countries could recover. It seems, I hope I'm wrong. Uh, so if there is a kind of a strategic downturn in bilateral relations, one can pose this question. Ambassador Manjeet Puri said that, ultimately the Himalayas are there and the logic of geography is there. How compulsive is this logic? I mean, can bad politics or the kind of aggressive micromanagement, the kind of high stakes that China has in Nepal, uh, overwhelm the advantages of geography, culture, history, civilization, etc., that India has in Nepal? These are these are issues which I think we need to very deeply introspect on in India with friends in Nepal, but there's no doubt about it. In Nepal, at the end of the day, whatever people might say about China and so on, they know that India is really the genuine well-wisher of Nepal. What has India not done to help Nepal develop from what it used to be many, many years ago when it first came on the international stage? From the first post office, the first airport, the first university, the first hospital, first roads. I mean, everything that India has done at the cost of the Indian taxpayers' money, and with a totally, uh, you know, I think it has been an approach which has been largely selfless, I would say, from my own knowledge. In any case, there are a lot of takeaways from the ideas that have been given. And due to paucity of time, I'll cut short the remarks that I wanted to make. Uh, one idea I think that has been mentioned briefly was that India should, or hinted at briefly, that India should not fight shy of working with other like-minded countries like the US, Japan, Europe, etc., building new supply chains to integrate Nepal more closely with the Indian economy. So I think India first, Atmanirbhar India, digital India, etc., is fine. But we need to give neighbors like Nepal the feeling that they are also part of this new India that we are trying to build, and they would be equal beneficiaries. In fact, Mr. Ram Madhav made an interesting point in an article that he wrote some time back, that instead of security and instead of neighborhood first, we should talk about a new paradigm for neighboring countries like Nepal, which is that we can grow together. And I think that is something that should be picked up in right earnest, and that should be given the highest priority. I think the Kalapani issue should not be allowed to fester for too long. That is very clear. In fact, I'll now move to some of the questions that I have already received. I will mention all the questions and then uh, turn to the new questions that are coming in, and then leave it to the panelists to decide who wants to answer what. One, India should publicly express hope that constitutional processes will be respected and find a way of engaging with government as well as opposition. This point has already been made, and I think we need not go into that. I think we are all agreed that we should be engaging with all the players. Another question is, any chance of projects like Pancheshwar, which could be game changers and enhance Nepal's self-confidence vis-a-vis India? Any chance of such big projects coming up? Next question is, India and Nepal have a special relationship and open border. Why not apply open border principle to disputed areas so that it can be settled on basis of historical evidence? There is a question about the eminent persons group saying, why not receive and publicize a report without necessarily accepting recommendations? I find that Professor Lokraj Baral has made an interesting suggestion in yesterday's Kathmandu Post, where he says that if the EPG report is not up to, let us say, India's expectation for any reason, we should not keep on harping on it and look at other possibilities. Lots of channels of communication available in which the issues mentioned by the EPG, which could not be accepted by, let us say, the government of India, can be taken up and resolved. Another question is, India brokered the 2006 agreement resulting in the fall of the monarchy. Now there seems to be a new demand for the return of monarchy. Is India still opposed to monarchy given the apparent failure of political parties? So I don't want to give any weightage to any particular question. If any of the panelists would like to answer any of these questions, the floor is yours, and then we will turn to any remaining questions which are coming in through the coordinator. Panelists, anyone would like to comment on any of these questions?
Yeah.
Pancheshwar? Yeah. Please. Manjeet, would you like to say anything on the Pancheshwar project?
Yes, sir. Sir, thank you very much. I want to draw attention to the fact that only 2 days back, the Lower Arun project was also awarded to India. Now, whether it's Mr. Oli controlling the narrative or him playing the game, doesn't matter. We should take these things as they go forward. We know what are the issues with Pancheshwar. But, sir, I think let us also be mindful in Nepal too about what's happening in the global scene on renewables, etc. It's a very complex game. But in India, the theory that had got put forward that solar has overtaken everything and therefore Pancheshwar is now no longer relevant because it's not cost effective. I don't know, sir, whether we might be made to go back. I think Pancheshwar is doable. As and when you have the opportunities, please take it and go for it. I think it's a project which will be game changing for Nepal and game changing for India too, sir. And I mean not electric power, I mean water resources.
Thank you.
May I?
Ranjit?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Just a couple of comments. Pancheshwar, absolutely doable. The only critical issue is the question of existing consumptive use of water. And I think over here, India needs to be magnanimous because the benefits of this project far outweigh additional costs that we may have to bear by being a little more generous on this question of current water usage. So I think we should really push for this, and this will be a game changer in terms of our bilateral relations. I think our long-term goal should really be to bring the two economies together. You spoke about how to grow together. And I think this is one of the ideal ways which will strengthen the connection between India and Nepal, will also have huge, apart from economic benefits, I think politically cement the relationship. Boundary discussion, of course, discussions must begin. Now that there is an issue, it has to be resolved through debate and negotiation. And, at some stage, I think discussions will have to begin. On the EPG report, I think Professor Baral's point is very interesting. And, obviously, since the report itself is not going anywhere, my understanding is that the key issue for the Nepalese side is the 1950 treaty. So perhaps we can start the foreign secretary level dialogue on the 1950 treaty. Because, Prime Minister Modi, when you went to Nepal, said very clearly, we are prepared to discuss it and do, consider whatever your proposals are. So I think the time, we should start this dialogue. On the monarchy, I mean, there is this impression in Nepal, which is totally incorrect, that somehow it was India that, was responsible for the elimination of monarchy in Nepal. And this is completely false. It's far from the truth. It's really for the people of Nepal to decide what kind of system and governance that they have. I don't think India has any role to play in this matter.
Thank you. I'm glad you clarified that point, and I hope our Nepalese friends will take that on board. Now, Sundaram, would you have any other questions that are coming in? We don't have much time, maybe in the next 5 minutes or so, if you...
For me?
Yeah. Are there any other questions that I was asking?
Quickly, I think, we must change our instruments of engagements with Nepal, institutions of engagement with Nepal, because as Ambassador Puri said that India does not realize the changes in Nepal, does not realize the changes in India, right? What we independently see is we still use the same orthodox methods of engaging with Nepal and with other countries also. And there is a huge structural change, orientation change in all these neighboring countries. In 1960, the Treaty of Trade, India and Nepal agreed to have a common market, move steadily to a common market. And we have been saying that, can we have a situations where, given the size of Nepal, given the economy of Nepal, can we say, okay, Nepal, you decide what kind of common market you want with India, right? You decide. Instead of we negotiating with Nepal, let us offer it to Nepal, right? It has its own problems related to transit, own problems related to composition of exports and imports. Let's see what kind of common market it wants, because we thought that when SAFTA happened, South Asian Free Trade Area Association happened, we thought that we are fast moving towards common, but it did not. Therefore, shall we say that the second point I would like to mention here is, whatever we do, we must go out of all kinds of bureaucratic boxes. We must come out of it. Say, for example, Pancheshwar project. On Pancheshwar project, we discuss Karnali, Rapti, Pancheshwar for last 50, 60 years now, right? And I think this is high time that we should really move as fast as possible, involving all kinds of institutions, instruments, so that all these core projects are realized. Otherwise, look what is happening between India and Sri Lanka on the Eastern Corridor terminal in case of Colombo. After 2 years, right, almost after 2 years, they will unilaterally withdraw. But if you really make dent into it, first of all, let's not sign any agreement if we are not in a position to move forward, right? We could not produce DPR for the Mahakali agreement for almost 20 years, right? Almost 15 years. So therefore, if we are not in a position to move fast, let's not sign any agreement. But the moment we sign agreement, at least I would say 20% of the groundwork should have been done before signing the agreement, so that it really gets into a kind of a fast track mode. Thank you.
Implementation. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good point. Okay, I think unless
Anyone
there
wants
is-
to ask questions? No, I don't see anyone.
no. Any other questions unanswered?
I
No?
think, no. Yeah.
Okay. In that case, I think unless any of the panelists would like to add to whatever has already been said, since we are running out of time, do I have your permission now to thank everyone for participating in this very, very interesting discussion, and for all the ideas that have been shared with us, and which we will continue to discuss and ponder over in the days and weeks ahead, even as we watch with great interest as to what happens in Nepal on the constitutional crisis that the country faces. Thank you very much, and I look forward to being in touch on this very interesting subject in the weeks and months to come. Thank you very much, IIPP, for organizing this.
Thank you.
so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
yeah,
Thank
for
you
that.
very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.